Hello, Josh. Welcome to the new channel. Thank you so much for coming and speaking to me today. First, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where are you from? What do you do for work? And a little bit about your family, too.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate this opportunity to introduce myself and talk about some of the issues. So I guess my commitment to public service began September 11th. I was at Yale University and I watched America be attacked, and that changed my life. I had a question that I just couldn't shake. Why not me? So I had an opportunity. I transferred from a community college into Yale, and I thought it would be a great idea to finish my degree, which I did, got it in theater studies. And then I enlisted in a special program that allowed civilians with no military experience to enter or at least try out for the U.S. Army Special Forces or Green Berets. Mm-hmm. I enlisted, and 2.5 years later, I made the cut, earning the Green Beret and then deploying multiple times to Afghanistan and once to Honduras. It was on that second deployment to Afghanistan where some of the mission sets of the U.S. Army Special Forces are pretty cool and interesting. One was unconventional warfare, where you are basically tasked with eliminating the bad folks and empowering those who align with American interests and nation build. So part of that was me finding people that were supportive and trying to help out the country that we were at war with. Mm-hmm. When I met with my commander, I think the solution was that we try to build schools, which was given to me. Because there were two things in Afghanistan that were really lacking. One was laws and one was education. And my team gave me the title of non-commissioned officer in charge of non-lethal effects. I built or tried to build schools in coordination with USAID and some other military assets, specifically girls' schools and vocational schools, because I thought those were the most immediate needs of the country. Mm-hmm. The nature of some of the elite units is that the deployments don't last that long, but I did build it, start it, and then turned it over to some of these other paramilitary organizations to continue the work. Mm-hmm. I fell in love with that, and I thought that was the real solution to ending the war, was to actually nation build through schools and laws. So I got out of active duty and got accepted into Harvard for an international education policy, thinking I would go back overseas and try to work on some of the education systems there. Mm. But while at Harvard, I realized that the American school system needed a lot of help too. So I became a teacher. Mm-hmm. Lawrence, Massachusetts was in state receivership, and I became an English teacher in the 10th grade and an English as a second language teacher, and just fell in love with the work. Super rewarding. I loved the students. It was a close-knit staff, really great work. And I knew this was meaningful. Mm-hmm. To supplement my income as a first-year teacher, I used the GI Bill and got my law degree at night. Entered the National Guard and became eventually an attorney, and I just finished up my 20th year this July 7th. Mm-hmm. And knowing that I wanted to expand my influence in the education sector, I moved out of the classroom and went to become an administrator, first on the Cape, and now I am the principal of a 6 through 12 public school, Holbrook Middle High School. Mm-hmm. I am the father of 3 children, and I think the reason I'm running is because I want to make a difference in the state legislature. Some of these experiences have shaped me. I think I've worked with folks in all different types of background. I think I can improve schools. I think there's too few legislators with my background, both militarily and education. Mm-hmm. And I think you need people who have been in the weeds that can inform these discussions and guide them, mm-hmm. and know what it means to lead. And I think I can help do that.
I have to refer to my notes that yes. You're also a judge advocate general. Yes. What is that?
It's a fancy military term for an attorney in the military. I've had several jobs. I was first legal services for the National Guard of with Massachusetts, and then I became trial defense services. I was the senior Regional Defense Council, where I represented soldiers who got in trouble. And then now I am currently with the 151 Regional Support Group, where I advise commanders and try to support the unit through sound legal advice.
What are some of the other qualities that make you the best candidate for this position?
I'm good at listening. I do have experience working with groups of diverse backgrounds, diverse interests, high stakes situations, whether it's military missions that are challenging to accomplish, or trying to move schools forward. That is a challenging job. Moving schools forward and bringing out student potential is not an easy task. And I think I've learned something from these experiences. And I think a knowledge of the law is important if you want to be a lawmaker and a legislator. And I think that that differentiates me from some of the other candidates on the ticket.
And what are some of the issues you want to address if elected?
I think housing is front and center. It is the most important issue on the currently. Personally, my folks wanted to live here and simply couldn't afford to. Their primary means of income was Social Security, their check, and to stretch it farther meant they had to live elsewhere. So personally, I see some of our older population needing support with housing. I also see some of our first-time home buyers needing support with housing. I knock doors and I hear stuff about people who are principals of the town and they can't afford to live here, even though, they're leading schools. Some of the things we need to do is to make sure that public servants, police, fire, teachers, nurses, municipal employees, those who, protect our property, put out our fires, teach our kids, have a way to be in the town. They're a vital part of it. They should be allowed to live here. And I think, along those lines, the state has obviously taken a keen interest in this issue. They've put several, I think, sweeping bills on the table, whether it's the MBTA Communities Act and, of course, the Affordable Homes Act, which is a broad sweeping bill meant to ease some of the supply issues of housing and make housing across the board and across the state more affordable. The last thing I'll say, I have also experienced some issues with this professionally. I had a teacher resign last week that, said to me, I love working here. I have a good relationship with my peers, administration. And I asked her, why do you want to move? And she said simply she can't afford to live here. So, personally, professionally, and, this being the central issue on the ticket, is something I think I would spend time making sure that we're advancing in ways that are comfortable, supporting Governor Healy and her AHA, and coming to a balance as to what the MBTA should look like in Needham, whether the Needham housing or the base version.
Are there any other proposals that you want to share with that regarding addressing housing crisis or increasing the housing stock in the Commonwealth?
I think just making sure that those folks who do so much for our communities have a place to live in that community. I think targeting those groups of people is important, and making sure that they're able to live with us.
What are the other issues you want to address?
I think climate change is on everyone's mind. That is a central issue, and I think it is an existential threat that we need to take action on. So I think we need to transition to electric-based power sources in as many ways as possible. The train, more carports. I think we need more bike lanes and sidewalks. I hear a lot about that. And, the solar options. So I think that making sure that we are transitioning and doing what's right for our planet so that it's in good shape for us and for our kids, that is something we need to put front and center. I mean, I think political discourse in this country is a real issue, right? We can't seem to compromise and get along so well. There's such extremism. And I think that's one thing I would bring as a military member and as an educator, just working with different groups of people productively, regardless of what side of the aisle they're on. I can help with that. I just want to progress, and I'm happy to listen to people of all different beliefs. and work towards common solutions. I just think there's not enough of that right now. And I think if you put folks like me in there, that will improve. And that is important.
Are there any current legislative proposals that you strongly support and would like to advance if elected?
I mean, I do think the AHA is the biggest proposal on the table. I think it just expands the supply of housing throughout the state. It also meets some green requirements for the current stock of housing. The MBTA would affect Needham more than the AHA. But I think the AHA, if passed, if it lowers costs of housing in other districts neighboring, would also have an effect on Needham. And I'd be curious to see if it's enough, and if not, then we need to look at other options to, still attack the problem.
And what are your thoughts on charging a transfer fee on high-value properties? This proposal by Governor Maura Healey was included in her version of the housing bond bill, but was removed both by Senate and House.
I think that's one of those things I need to speak to more of the constituency on. I'd like to get a better sense of what people in the community feel and think about that. There is a tension here. People want their property values not to sink, right? And at the same time, we want a more inclusive society. And figuring out what that looks like is a challenge. And I think I would just like more input before I say yes or no to that specific issue.
And the millionaire tax, which was approved by Massachusetts voters in 2022 and has raised, I think, $1.8 billion in the past fiscal year in avenue for the Commonwealth. And the law required to be invested in education and transportation. What are your perspective on how to spend this money to improve our education and transportation system?
So I can tell you our education system needs more. I think that money being rerouted to education is a good investment. Last year, so I work in a school that is 58% non-white, it's diverse, and when I did an assessment of some of the things the school needed, I came up with a solution that we needed more electives, which led me to trying to get a schedule change. I couldn't get there. And the reason simply was the change in schedule would have cost me 6 additional teachers. So I couldn't get the students what I thought they needed. And ultimately, who loses? It's the students who are going to be less prepared for what's coming next. Wealthier towns like Needham don't have that issue as much, but I can tell you a lot of districts are feeling the pinch. And the more resources we can dedicate to schools, the less problems society has. I think to do education well is priority one for a society. If that's done right, a lot of the ills of society go away. That's why I've donated so much of my life to this, because I think it is super important. And to spend money on that and invest in our kids, I can't think of anything that's more important.
Any thoughts on transportation improvement?
So, the quiet zones that they're trying to push in Needham, I think that's, a lot of residents seem to have concern about that. And it seems like the select board is, doing stuff to advance that, especially trying to get the trains to not sound so early, I think there's ways to do that. Also, I think we need to electrify the trains. I think, it's a cost issue, but I think that would also help with some of the climate change issues. Like I said, doing the bike lanes and sidewalks, I think we could use greater connectivity on those things, and I think that would improve some of the climate issues as well. And also make Needham a more enjoyable town to, just walk around in. With regards to Dover, I saw that they got a grant for, I think it was the rail trail. I think that would be nice to connect that to some of the neighboring towns. And, I think that those things would help with transportation and also make for a better community to live in. More walkable, more bikeable, more natural.
Are there anything else you want to share with the audience regarding your candidacy?
So I guess I'd be viewed as an outsider to some extent. I've only lived here 3 years. I think there's good with having some of that perspective, fresh eyes. I've also worked across the state. You know, I taught in Lawrence. I was an administrator on the Cape. Through the National Guard and COVID, I've worked in Springfield, Worcester, throughout. I think it's given me a statewide perspective. Also being born in Chicago, raised in Baltimore, spent some time traveling overseas. I've been able to see a lot of different perspectives through my travels too. And I think some of those are valuable to bring into the conversation as well. And most importantly, you know, I have a track record of leadership in difficult positions. I've led soldiers, I've led classrooms, and I've led schools. I think that should mean something to the voter, because I think that the experience of being a state rep is going to have a lot of commonality between some of those jobs and the one that I'm basically applying for.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Josh, for
Thanks.
coming and talking to me today, and I wish you good luck.
Thanks, I appreciate it.